Hey, Janet. Good to see you again. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you. I'm excited to be here with you today.
Yeah, it's
It's been
great.
a minute.
It's been a minute. Yeah, it's weird looking back and seeing like a 7 month gap between things. But it's been a nice break, I gotta say. But as a means of getting back into it and hitting people up, hitting up old friends, it was really cool to get together with you again. And I want to thank you for having me on your show back then. But for this new 2023 year, I'm excited to get into it with you. So, Janet, can you think back? When did you start to speak your truth?
Oh Lord.
Hmm.
As in the podcast world or all together, because those are totally different stories. I went to Catholic school, and so I got in a lot of trouble in Catholic school, of course, taught by nuns, for asking too many questions,
Mm.
questioning things that they would say. And yeah, I got bloody knuckles from the ruler more than once.
Nice. Yeah, it's a badge of honor these days to ask too many questions, I think, and
Hmm.
that's something heroic about that curiosity and that natural curiosity too, especially when you're younger and you can kind of suss out the BS pretty
Hmm.
easily. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah. Well, it was really cool to learn about your story and to share our teaching experiences.
Hmm.
And by the way, I'm still teaching new
Good for
school here
you.
in Texas. Same shit, different day. Different
Same
state, same
politics
shit.
involved.
Yeah. But I'm enjoying it. I'm making the absolute best of it. But I wanted to ask you about the medical industry, or maybe not even the industry part, because that's a topic that gets played on a lot and I think
Hmm.
people are tired of it. And what I
It's a
wanted to
very
ask you,
deep subject. Yeah.
it's very deep. Yeah, I mean, I can certainly find a lot of value in learning more about it, but I wanted to ask you about something alternative. And I sent you a photo earlier. I was reading
Hmm.
any chance that I get in between tasks. I'm always reading during work time, and
Hmm.
I had this ebook open. This is from As a Man Thinketh, and
Hmm.
part of it has to do with some holistic health principles. I wanted to ask your opinion, but before I get into that, that was just kind of like a sneak preview of what's going to come next. Can
Hmm.
you tell people a bit about your career, what you've done, your podcast, and anything else you'd like to share with people who may not know you?
Oh boy. I have been in the medical field for a very, very long time. So I retired as a nurse. So I did that and a nurse manager for a very long time, but I've also done billing, coding, collections, appeals, worked home health care, worked in the morgue. I was a autopsy assistant, which
Wow.
was
Yeah.
a really cool job. I enjoyed that quite immensely. Let's just put it that way, because they can't talk back to you.
Yeah, that's true. True.
So I've done literally anything and everything in the
Mm.
medical field. Went to school originally for business, so I got my business degree. And when I was done, I was like, "Oh, I hate this. Don't like accounting. Don't enjoy number crunching. Can't stand sitting behind a desk." And so that's when I decided, I'm gonna like actually go back and follow the original path that I was going to take in the first place. So those things led me to working in a teaching facility, a teaching hospital. And the doctor came up to me one day and he's like, "Oh, I think you'd be really good if you would let the students follow you around and you could be the site preceptor here." And I'm like, "Ugh, people, no, I
Mm.
don't want to do that." I'm like, I don't want to do that. And so it took a really long time for him to actually talk me into doing that aspect. And so the teaching part started at the teaching facility at the hospital, and, you know, having doctor students, nurses, phlebotomists, literally any kind of student you could think of in the medical community, they would come through our facility, and that's what we would do. So I would do basically on the job training for people.
Mm.
Um, and then from there, it turned into classroom teaching. And so I did that for quite a long time too. And then I gave it up because I was a little adverse to working 80 hours a week
Oh yeah.
and
Absurd.
not getting any sleep
Hmm.
because they were making me teach a split shift. So I was doing like all morning long until noon, and then I'd have to go back at 5 p.m. and teach until 10,
Hmm.
and then drive an hour to get home and then grade papers and
Yeah, it's hard to
make
have any kind of
tests.
life with that. Yeah.
Yeah. And so like I didn't see my husband, I didn't see the kids, and yeah. So I was like, okay, I gotta let this go.
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And
So
your
podcast
show, yeah.
Yeah, podcast wise, it's called Deplorable Nation. And I will literally talk to anybody about anything. But what I'm really interested in is just people's stories.
Hmm.
Um, people bring all different kinds of information, and everybody has had some kind of backstory, something that's happened. And sometimes it relates to the medical field, sometimes it relates to the political arena, or anything else. And so I'll talk to anybody about anything because I just love chit chatting with people.
It's the best, isn't it? I mean, there's
Right.
billions of podcasts. The only thing that makes it stand out is us, is our
Yeah,
unique perspective.
absolutely.
There's nothing better than sharing that. And well,
Yeah,
it's interesting. There are so many things I want to get into. And to start, like I said, I want to pull up this quote that I sent you earlier. I'm
you
gonna read
should
part of
read
it.
it because it's beautiful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Starts off by saying, and the reason why I'm asking you is because your background in the medical field, but also I
Mhm.
am aware. By the way, the Deplorable Nation podcast, I see that the tagline below is red pill for the masses, right? Or red pills for the masses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a nice irony there. That we can talk about that in a bit. But this quote, it goes, "The body is the servant of the mind. It
Mm-hmm.
obeys the operations of the mind, whether they be deliberately chosen or automatically expressed. At the bidding of unlawful thoughts, the body sinks rapidly into disease and decay. At the command of glad and beautiful thoughts, it becomes clothed with youthfulness and beauty." And I wanted to ask you, when you're working in the medical setting, or now that you've had some distance between that career and your current day to day
Mm-hmm.
life, how do you respond to this kind of information, which kind of it throws in the trash the idea that we are only living in this materialist reductionist world, and that our thoughts can actually influence our health? It's a lot to take in
It
for
is
someone
a
who's not used to that, but
100% truthful
mhm,
because your mindset and your behaviors and your emotions control everything else in your body. And when you're super stressed out, um, or you've had like things that are traumatic or triggering for you, and I mean real triggers, right? Like from traumas or from like a home invasion, things like that.
mm,
Okay. When we don't address those emotions that come along with those, we store those emotions at a cellular level. And that is when your body starts to break down. So if you're having uh, like a lot of depression, anxiety, you're worried about everything, you live in a constant state of fear or constant state of internal struggle,
mm,
basically you store that, and that is what your body feeds on, is that negative energy and those negative thoughts. And that is 100% true. That is when your body goes completely out of balance, out of
mm,
homeostasis, and starts reproducing, cancer cells, or reproducing foreign invaders in your body. I
mm.
don't believe in bacteria and viruses.
Interesting. Okay.
I believe it is toxins from the environment,
Right.
right? But your body has to stay in a state of balance to keep you well. And so to me, um, it is nothing to do with the germ theory, right? That
Mm,
says disease and is caused by bacteria and viruses. It's your internal environment, your internal state. And
mm.
that goes along with the emotions and the thoughts that you have. And, you know, what kind of things enter your mind every day and what kind of state your mind is, because your mind is the main control center for the entire body.
Right on. Well said. Well said. Now, I want to give you a real life example, something that actually happened to me today, and I would like to hear
Mm-hmm,
you kind of help me unpack it because it's
mm-hmm,
something hopefully not too many people can relate to, but I know for a fact that whenever someone cuts you off in traffic or is just driving like an idiot,
mm-hmm,
I've noticed this today because I was driving home and I'm like 20 minutes out of downtown Dallas, and I do love it here. But at certain times of
you
the
love your
day,
20-lane highway.
yeah, oh yeah, there's like never traffic. But on this particular day, there was traffic, of course, and
Mm-hmm,
so people were on edge. I could feel it all around me. I'm pretty
mm-hmm,
empathic sometimes, and
mm-hmm,
what happened was I was cut off, and I felt, imagine like a volcano. It's like bubbling up.
mm-hmm,
It's about to burst,
right.
and I felt
Mm-hmm,
the stinging fire
mm-hmm,
burning up and coming up my chest. And I took a deep breath, and it seemed to like go back down. But I was
mm-hmm.
tempted in that moment to do a number of things, honk or stick my finger out the window or any other
Flip
of
him the
those.
bird.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. What is happening here when we connect our mind and our body? That feeling, that anger building up, how do people deal with that if they are going to get quote unquote triggered by what's happening in the world or what they're reading on the TV, on
Mm-hmm.
et cetera, et cetera? How do people deal with that?
Well, and especially what you experienced today, a lot of people go through that
Mm,
on a regular basis, and it automatically kicks in your fight or flight, right?
mm,
Your concern for your safety automatically kicks in, and that's where that like anger emotion, wells up, and it's like almost like putting up a safety net around you, right?
right.
And so my favorite thing to do in situations like that, which may sound really insane to some people, but I'm like, that'll come up and I'll be like, but it's okay. I'm okay. And that person might have had somewhere that was an emergency for them to be
Exactly.
at,
Yes.
and
Yes.
so that emotion came up and I dealt with it and I
Mm,
reassured myself that I'm still safe, and so I can let that go and move on. Because if you don't and you're like, what are
mm,
you coming out for? And flipping the bird and all of that stuff, and you didn't address when that came up, that settles back down in your body and you store that.
yes.
Yeah. And so then maybe the next time that happens to you, you're going to get even angrier and
Mm,
you are going to do something, or maybe you're going to start like tailgating the person or whatever. People respond in very unusual ways, to that stress situation where they feel like they're cornered, or something
right.
around them is making them unsafe.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like in this modern society, there are only a few opportunities to feel like that in the day to day. We're for the
Mm-hmm,
most part pretty safe. Even if you're living in a pretty rough area, like for the
mm-hmm,
most part, there aren't predators out to get you at all times. For the
right.
most part, it's pretty safe. But it's interesting. I'm looking at another part of this quote, and it says anxiety quickly demoralizes the entire body and lays it open to the entrance of disease, while impure thoughts, even if not physically indulged, will soon shatter the nervous system. And to end that point, later on, they go on to say that basically the mind and the body will respond to each other in tandem. So when your
That's true.
mind is feeling
Mm-hmm,
ill, your body feels ill, and
mm-hmm.
etc. They go vice.
And that is why a lot of people that suffer from anxiety have that like that overwhelming urge, or that that you feel like you can't control, where you can't breathe, your chest
Mm,
is tight,
yeah.
your heart's beating out of your chest, whatever. And same thing with people with depression. They're so focused on um and a lot of times it's negative feelings about themselves,
Mm,
right? I'm a failure. I failed everyone around me. I'm worthless. I can't do anything. And when you focus on things like that, it does take a toll on you because you can't physically move. You're really, really tired. You're exhausted. You have no energy. You almost feel flu-like when you get into one of those depressive states, right?
Yeah.
And because that's your body like so far out of balance that it's like doesn't know what to do.
Hmm.
And it's like, okay, we're gonna shut everything down hoping that you will calm down.
Hmm.
And that's why you have that, lowered energy and, all of those things when you have a depressive state. So,
Yeah, that's interesting. That always reminds me of like
mhm,
when people say trust your gut, because then you know for sure that you're receiving a signal that is meant
mhm,
to help you. And it's
100%.
yeah. Oh, you just muted yourself. There you go. Yeah.
Sorry. That's
Yeah.
like our second quote unquote nervous system, right? Is our gut brain biome
Right.
and how closely they are related because your your brain needs the enzymes and things that you create inside your gut to keep
Mm.
your body healthy
Yeah.
and vice versa. And so when you're, let's say, eating a lot of processed foods, and so you're ingesting a lot of toxins and things like that, it makes the neurons in your brain not work properly, not
Mm.
fire properly. And so anytime we release hormones or chemicals or enzymes, things like that in our body, they're not being processed properly by the neurons in our brain because the body doesn't know what to do with them.
Yeah, well said, well said. No, it's a great reminder for folks.
Sorry.
When I'm hearing your dog bark now, it kind of reminds me of that too. Like I feel like I'm very similar to a dog in the fact that like if I don't get my daily walk, I feel like I carry this gunk around and I
Right.
start like getting a
I'm
little
the same way. Yep.
yeah. So it's cool. It's a cool reminder, to think about how we take care of ourselves and to segue into something a little different. I wanted to ask
Hmm.
you sort of as a question on nostalgia, even
Hmm.
though a year isn't very long, but if you think about it, like
It can be.
it can be for sure. I mean, even the 7 months that I
Depends on
was
what's going on.
doing this, yeah, it depends on what's going on. Exactly. Now, in 2022, if you could kind of reflect back on your show, on your podcast, and some of the interviews that you've been doing, can you think of any that have challenged your paradigm the most, or some that have really made you stop and think, like, wow, that is something new that I've not thought of before? What comes up for you when you think of that?
That's a very good question because I'm very open-minded and receptive to
Mm,
things and ideas that, people have. Um, so I can't really think of anything right now that like caught me off guard or maybe go, huh, that's okay, that's an interesting way to look at things because I'm kind of one of those people that I look at things like from the outside of the box in
mm,
all the time anyway. And so even if there's a situation, like I'll consider like all different kinds of options and
yeah.
outcomes before like I make up my mind on, what I think. So it's really hard for me I can't think of anything right now.
Well, I would call that wisdom, being able to see all different points of view before even
Mm-hmm.
subscribing to one in particular.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right on. Well,
Look at me. I age like a fine wine.
yeah, there you go. There you go. And there's something
My
to
brain
that,
gets better with age.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been thinking a lot about this. There's this I guess like a semi-famous Twitter account that goes by Grim Hood. And they have the current moniker, it's like Magnesium Poppy. And this kid, I think he's in his 20s. He grew up with schizophrenia. He didn't realize though that his illness, his disease was due to his nervous system not functioning well because he wasn't feeding it the right things. And he
Right.
changed his diet, he changed the nutrients that he was taking in, and his entire nervous system
Mm-hmm.
transformed. And he would no longer be schizophrenic. He was able to cure it without
Hmm.
the intervention of like the standard protocol. And
Right.
in fact, he was very strong of the opinion that the standard protocol of some of these diseases were making it worse. And
100%.
in
Yes.
your experience, whether it's healing your nervous system or, just having any sort of tools at your disposal, how have you started to take your own health and wellness in your own hands now that you've kind of stepped away from the medical profession?
Um, you know what? It has, for me,
Mm-hmm.
I'm one of those people that while supplements are great,
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to take 75 supplements a day.
Yeah, be better not
Um,
to have to do that.
yeah, that's a lot for me. And I know a lot of other people feel the same way. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I try to focus on is a lot of not just foods in general, but different herbs, different spices. And
Mm-hmm.
so I got into crafting my own.
Nice.
Um, and so I make my own, seasoning blends and stuff like that. I started making like my own like different kinds of tea for different things. And so like there's a pain tea that I started making like because sometimes I get migraines.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I made this specifically for that. I've done different things like lotions or soaps, or magnesium lotion is a big one, like
Mm-hmm.
for pain and stuff
Yeah.
like that. And so I started doing all of those things for myself, instead of like buying it and hoping that is really a holistic product, because a
Yes.
lot of the holistic products still have a lot of garbage in them. So I started doing that, and I started like just paying really close attention to label reading. Like if I have to buy something from the store,
Mm.
paying attention to that, making sure I know everything that's in there. And I'm like, okay, stay away from these things because it has this, this, and this. And so for me, it's not really about supplementation so much,
Mm.
which I do take some, but yeah, I don't overload on that. I focus on food.
Awesome, awesome. I really like that. It's cool. It's always nice to hear, like, I'm assuming you've got a garden or something like that going. You got a way to get rid
um,
of your
my
herbs
garden
or
did not survive well this year. A lot of
Mhm.
people around this area had a really hard time with their garden. And so we have, I'm fortunate enough in the area that we live in, we have a really beautiful farmers market that I would go
Nice.
to all the time.
Yeah.
And so whatever I couldn't grow myself, which my herbs lasted very short term this year.
Mm.
But I would get things from there. And so, like, I did, oh my gosh, I canned literally all summer
Oh,
long.
nice. Okay.
Yeah. So, I'm able to get things like that, or I'll buy like, things that I know are organic produce or whatever, and dry them in my dehydrator. And, I have a grinder that I'll grind things up in. So I've even got like wheat berries and stuff so I can mill my own flour. So
Good
yeah,
stuff. Good stuff. If the apocalypse is gonna go down, then you're
yeah,
in a good
we're
spot.
stocked.
And yeah. Now this might sound like a funny segue, but I just saw this interesting video recently. My friend sent it to me. I think Russell Brand is a pretty funny guy, and
Hmm.
it's kind of funny. Like I grew up watching the Colbert Report and the Daily Show as a
Right.
middle schooler, high schooler.
Hmm.
I didn't know shit back then, but
Hmm.
I was enjoying myself and I was learning a couple of things, but it was mostly the humor. I think Russell Brand is moving into that direction now, but he's doing it in a very reasonable way. And what he was presenting in this video, two major things. So
Hmm.
I'm gonna explain both of them, and I'd love to hear your take, your thoughts, your reaction. So
Hmm.
number one was the big headline that it's officially confirmed that Ukraine has business deals with Black Black Rock, and that
Hmm.
is going to be a huge real estate development in an effort to rebuild um, the war torn country. And then number two, uh, probably related. In 4 days, there's going to be the World Economic Forum, the big meetup. And Russell Brand did a really funny video where it was like the WWE, like the WWEF, and it was like SmackDown versus Raw. And there's that Robin Williams joke about all the NASCAR drivers and they have all their brands representing them. He's like, who's going to represent Pfizer? Who's going to represent Moderna and all this?
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, it's kind of funny, but I'm curious between these two events, and we're in the beginning of 2023, and I'm curious, when you're looking ahead between you and your family and your daily life, do you think a lot's going to change for you personally, for us, for this country, or do you think it's going to be a lot of hype and a lot of nothing? I mean, how do you stand on these issues currently?
I honestly believe there's a lot of fear mongering on
Mm,
both sides, right? BlackRock has been on my radar for years.
yeah.
I used to be on No Mercy podcast, and we would do um, these funny drafts, like we did a COVID draft, like who was going to be the politician on TV that went and got the shot in front of everyone, or
Oh God. Yeah.
and this sounds really morbid, but like who's going to die of COVID,
Mm,
politician wise, or famous celebrities, stuff like that. And so we did a draft one time about like drafting people um that were uh, uh, like gonna go down,
mm,
for kind of like the when all the heads of all the companies were resigning or getting
right.
fired or
Right.
whatever. And my very first pick was the head of BlackRock.
Mm.
And they're like, what are you talking
That's
about?
a Fink,
I'm
right?
like, I'm like, yeah, I'm like, well, because BlackRock goes back a long way. Not only are they buying up like a lot of land here,
Mm,
they're involved with Ukraine, and they had a little dealio several years ago where Adam Schiff was financing through them and selling weapons.
yes.
Remember
Lockheed
that?
Martin, Boeing, a
Yeah,
lot of
yeah.
connections there.
Yeah. And so they are them and Vanguard are like
Mm,
the biggest financiers of pretty much
millions.
anything scummy on the planet.
Yeah.
And they all own shares, in Pfizer and all of that stuff. So of course it's in their best interest to keep gobbling up,
Mm,
as much as they can. Um, they're also actually have financial dealings with the Vatican as well.
mm-hmm.
And so if Klaus Schwab gets his way with everything that he wants, and everybody's going to be microchipped, and you will own nothing, and you will like it, and whatever, but they're underestimating the American people,
Right.
and to what point they can push people before they better run like hell. You know what I mean?
Oh,
Putting it in a
absolutely.
nice way.
Yeah, to put it in a pretty nice way. Yeah. I get you. I
Yeah.
get you.
Yeah. And so for me, like, is it going to affect us? No.
Mm,
It's not. And same thing with the financial system. Like everybody's worried because they're going to, Biden coin or whatever they're going to call it. Who knows?
hmm,
Um, but for them to be able to actually take everyone's money from them,
hmm.
that's another, without being a potty mouth, you know, think about it and try it and see what happens. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Yeah. Yeah.
Let's put that in a better way.
I
Yeah.
mean, it was only last year that people were like, "Oh, they're gonna go door to door and stick a
Hmm.
fucking needle in your arm," and it's like, "All
And
right,
coming door to door to get your guns. We've heard that. And so like I don't worry about anything that's outside of my pappy bubble.
nice."
I will look at stuff, I'll read it, I let it go in one ear and out the other, and I'm
Mm.
just like, okay, yeah, this is what they're saying, but okay, wink, yeah, that's gonna happen. And so my outlook on things is so much better because I don't give in to the fear mongering.
Yeah. That's exactly like referring back to what we opened up with, protecting your nervous system from unnecessary
Hmm.
toxins that we produce ourselves. I mean, yes,
Yes.
there's other people writing those articles and making those clips that
Hmm.
are supposed to steal your loosh or something like that.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
it's up to you to be
And
like, hey, I don't want to consume that.
you know, that's what they do. And like all of social media has, you know, that AI capability
Mm,
built in where they automatically predictively know what your response is going to be to a certain headline or
mm,
something based on, you know, what your views on, you know, certain reels are or whatever, how you automatically think, right?
yeah, yeah.
And so they have no idea about me because I'm like over here checking out cat videos, you know, stuff like that. And, you know, I don't spend a lot of time on social media anyway, but when I do, like I'm all over the place so they cannot figure me out 100%, if that makes sense.
Nice, nice. Now, I want to ask you, I've been curious and I've been thinking about it, but I guess I never got around to asking you. In any case, deplorable nation. You know, the first thing I think most people might think of, the first thing that I thought of was Hillary Clinton. And is that a fair assessment, you know, for the
That,
creation of your show?
yes, that is
Nice.
partially how I
Partially.
got my name
Mm.
because I used to have a very large Twitter account before it got nuked.
Ooh.
And so I was very vocal on there. And so anytime somebody would come at me and go, hillbilly, redneck, rube,
Hillbilly. Oh
cult
no.
member, you know, whatever, I just kept adding those things to my name. And
Nice.
it was like so long. It was like, deplorable Janet, hillbilly, redneck, roof, Colt 45, blah, 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 all these things.
First of her
I just kept,
name.
yeah, I just kept adding to it. And so then when they nuked it, I'm like, okay, I'm gonna have to shorten that
Was there
just
one
to,
particular tweet that got it nuked?
um, well, it might have been because called Brian Stelter a pansy ass baboon.
All right. It's
Yeah.
very creative. I'm gonna give
Yeah,
you that.
well, it's and I was commenting on something that he posted,
Hmm.
right? And so he came back at me basically with one of those, you know, uneducated, retarded white women, whatever, whatever, kind of like, you know, like bashing me. And I'm like, okay, you pansy ass baboon, let me tell you how it really is, you know, and stated my opinion. And of course, I probably shouldn't have called him that because that wasn't very nice. And I don't normally do that, but yeah, that's what nuked me
Hmm.
the first time.
No, the first time. Okay, I'm glad I asked. Yeah.
I'm on 7.
Nice. Okay, that's like a
Yeah.
new record as far as I can see. I mean,
Yeah. So
yeah.
right now I'm like flying stealthily under the radar.
Yeah.
Like I don't post a lot of like crazy stuff on there anymore.
Hmm.
Just to, you know, I already used
Yeah.
every IP address in the house. So
Hmm. So, were you doing the podcast back when you were working in the medical field? Like, was this all happening
mm-mm.
simultaneously, or you only started podcasting till after you had left?
Yeah. And what happened was, and I don't know if you remember this or not, but when Periscope was a thing,
Oh, okay, I do
okay.
remember.
And for people that don't know, Twitter absorbed Periscope, and so Periscope used to be an outside like video live service that you
Hmm.
could do, and you could stream it to multiple platforms at once or whatever. And so a good friend of ours was like doing periscopes, and he's like, oh, you should come on with me and chit chat. And so I started like doing that. We would just do lives randomly like whenever. And then from there he was on No Mercy, and so from there he was like, you should be part of No Mercy, you should like come on. And it was kind of funny because it was like all guys, like,
Hmm.
you know, Bob and Tommy are related, they're cousins, Tommy and Kurt are brothers. So it was like all there was 4 guys. And they're like, oh, I don't know if I want to have her on because it's a girl and she's probably going to get really offended really easily and whatever. And so after like a conference call between all of us, they're like, oh, she's worse than we are. Okay. Okay, you can be part of it. And
Well
so
done.
yeah, and so they originally had me come on to like talk about COVID, like before like the world went berserk, right?
Mm,
This was like at the very, very start where it was in China.
mm,
And so I did that. I did that for a while. And then I was like, you know what? I'm gonna have to do this. I'm gonna have to start my own because I'm chatty.
mm.
So I did.
I'm glad you ended up doing that. Yeah, and it's been cool going back through some of your older episodes. Well, actually, no, I meant to say recent episodes. The recent episodes that really stuck out. I mean, we've already talked about some holistic health stuff, and
Hmm.
you had someone on recently to talk about the Jesuits, and it's fascinating. I don't know how the timing was on this, but was her name was Amy, right? She was talking about the
Hmm.
Jesuits, right? So Amy
Hmm.
brought up the Pope. Of course, he was
Hmm.
when she brought him
Pope
up.
Satan.
Yeah, that's exactly what I remember you were saying. Yeah, he's not a popular figure here, and I don't know the timing on this episode, but like I know the I forgot the guy's name. Pope John Paul had passed away
Hmm.
a couple of weeks ago. Do you remember, if we're gonna compare and contrast? I mean, I know Vatican's kind of like Disney, they have like their
Yes.
own land, their own
Hmm.
state, city state.
Their own banking
Mhm.
system. They own a lot of real estate and
Mhm.
diamond stores and brothels. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
did an episode on the Vatican. It wasn't on my show. I did it on Conspiracy or Just a Coincidence with Jack Allen. A couple, I don't know, it's probably a bit close to 3 years ago now.
Hmm.
But her and I actually recorded that in December, like in early December. And so we recorded that before, of course, the Pope passed away and all of that stuff, which was like perfect timing.
Yeah, seriously, seriously. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's interesting to think about the various leaders, and sometimes people forget about the Pope. I mean, there's
Mm-hmm.
a lot of powerful people, and we should always empower ourselves, of
Mm-hmm.
course, but it's interesting to remember that there are certain people like the popes who have been wielding a special kind of influence. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you, if you think about the worst case scenario with the World Economic Forum and how maybe that's a lot of hype and fear mongering, I don't hear a lot of people talking about what might be the best case scenario. And I know people talk about solutions often, like
Mm-hmm.
build your own boat, have a plan, be
Mm-hmm.
prepared, all of this, and that's all great. But if things were to work out in a way that benefits everybody, how do you see that play out? And that could be like on the grand geopolitical scale or anything else that comes up for you when you think about the best case scenario. How does that look like for you?
Um, for me, and I think it's getting more so this way than what the media wants people to know. I think more people are being educated on the ways of how things work and politics and how politics and different religions like the Vatican and stuff all like tie together right in this big fluffy package and how like pharmaceutical executives get their jobs after they approve drugs at the FDA, then they go to work for pharmaceutical companies, things like that. So I think people are getting very educated to the
Mm,
ways of stuff. So for me, I believe that in the future, it's going to be harder and harder and harder for them to pull anything over on us. Now, that being said, there's still going to be people that obviously,
mm,
are never going to see the big picture, even if you like show them, a call between Klaus Schwab and, Joe Biden or something,
Right.
proof of something, they still won't see it, or don't care to see it, and that's fine. But I think not only people being more educated, but I think people are going to start like their own school systems,
Mm.
right? That are outside the norm. I think people are going to do a lot more homeschooling, or the schooling co-op things that they do in neighborhoods and stuff. I think there's going to be more of that. Um, Me personally, I think there's going to be more people like me that are healthcare providers that will do like home visits and things like that, that
Nice.
are outside of the medical system and the laws and governance of the
Mm.
CDC
Yeah.
and the federal government. So
Nice. Nice.
I think people are starting to wise up to things like that.
Mm. Yeah, there's some really interesting themes in your ideas here because are you familiar with Terrence McKenna?
Hmm.
So I always like when Terrence would talk about the archaic revival,
Hmm.
about returning to the older ways, the
Right.
traditional ways. And I'm thinking about like something modern, like welfare.
Hmm.
It's available. Not everyone needs to be on it. And
Right.
that's kind of like you were saying with public school, it's
Hmm.
available. It's gonna be there. I don't see it going anywhere. But like
Right.
people are wising up, like you said, and
Hmm.
transitioning away to something more wholesome. And it's really
Hmm.
cool. Um, I'm curious too, if you're gonna be preparing to learn something new, like what is something in 2023 that you want to get better at or learn more about? Like not necessarily a resolution, but like what is a topic that you're curious about that you want to become more informed on in the next coming year?
For me, because I've gotten into well, I've already been in like essential oils and stuff like that. And, I just recently started like soap making and things like that
Cool.
without lye. I make
Nice.
like my own laundry detergent, stuff
Oh,
like
good,
that.
good. Yeah.
So what's on the horizon for me is learning how to make like my own holistic medicines.
Mm.
That's what I want to do.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. And
Yeah.
it's when we've been having this discussion, I think about like the age of Aquarius. But I've never thought about this transitional period as like the DIY time
Hmm.
for
Right.
the average American, the average human citizen. And it's pretty
Right.
cool. It's inspiring. There's a lot you can make yourself. There's a lot you could do yourself that
Hmm.
frees you in a way. It frees you from
Yes.
having to depend on the system. Yeah.
Yeah, and I love doing stuff like that. And so like, you know, I haven't figured out how to make like mousse for my hair or
Mm.
deodorant yet. But I do like shampoo and all of that kind of stuff. And I'm like, pat myself on the back. I'm like, oh, that came out awesome. And I'm like, okay, so the word this could be changed and done better. And so like I would love to come up with not just, like medications and ointments and
Mm.
and tinctures and things like that, but I would really like to hone or get better at like survival skills.
Oh, okay.
I'm
Yeah.
pretty decent with a lot of stuff, but I want to get better.
Nice.
So,
Nice. Well, that's all gonna benefit you for sure. I mean, learning the survival skills is probably gonna be a lot of fun too. I can imagine
hmm.
just getting out there and learning your local plants or anything of that nature
Hmm.
is gonna be a lot of fun. And
Yeah.
um, well, as we begin to wrap up, I know that there's a lot to check out on your show. Could you let us know in the near future, because this episode's going to be coming out pretty quickly. It's January 12th,
Hmm.
2023, and I wanted to ask you what's coming up next for your show. Do you have anything in particular you'd like to announce that people can expect to check out in the future?
Oh man, I have so many good shows coming up right now. And this sounds really silly, but I record ahead of time because I have had people that canceled like 5 minutes before a show.
Yeah.
So I have got a lot of them already already done, and I've got a lot of great guests coming up. And so this year I'm going to I still want to have, returning guests,
Nice.
but I also want to get some very interesting new guests that I haven't had on yet. So
Oh, okay.
the secret.
Sounds like it'll be a fun surprise. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I want to thank you so much, Janet. It's been really fun talking. And for, this last year of getting involved with this community. And when I say this community, I mean anyone who's willing to have
A
a
conversation.
conversation that is just reasonable and respectful. I just want to say I appreciate you. Keep doing what you're doing. I'm inspired, and I know you're inspiring a lot of other people.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And thank you so much for having me on your show. You're always such a pleasure to talk to, and you're always smiling, and it's infectious and contagious. And I love that about you. So keep doing what you're doing and keep spreading that joy and happiness that radiates from you, my friend.
Smiles, they're safe and effective, folks.
That's
Thank you
right.
so much. Take care, Janet. Have a wonderful night.
You too. Bye bye.
Bye bye.